Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio, Mondays at 1 and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today we have special guest Deborah Driggs. And she is an incredible friend and has done so much in her life. So originally she was Playboy Centerfold, Miss March 1990, Covergirl April 1990, which is really hard to get, and awardee of the insurance industry's $1 Million Roundtable. Then she was also first VJ for Playboy Channel's Hot Rocks, member of the Screen Actors Guild. She graduated from Baron Brown Studio Acting Technique Program, and she's a member of Tony Robbins' Platinum Alliance Partnership, 2018 until present. She's a moderator and coordinator fundraiser for CNN's Van Jones Prison Reform Movement. She has helped with the Redemption Project. She's an advocate for social change. Virgin Unite, our Operation Underground Railroad, so she helps with that. And she adopted a remote Andean primary school in Peru through Go Campaign. She's also donated to Horses in Our Hands, a nonprofit to save horses for slaughter in Arizona, Helping Hands, provider of essential for children in foster care. That is beautiful. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Super grateful to see you. And I wish we were doing this in person, but you know, here we go, right? This is what life's about now, but it's really good to see you. Yeah, Sheila and I are very good friends and part of the whole Tony world. So beautiful to be here.
And one of the things I like to start off with is I wrote this book that actually brought me into this radio and TV show, and that is Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And then the pandemic hit. So we have had every situation. I like to start off by asking if you've had a time in your business or personal life where you hit a tough situation, and what did you do to get back on track?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to say that I actually read your book, and I want to say, wow, I love in the very, very beginning of Sheila's book. I'm sorry, I've got to give you some kudos right now, but I love in the beginning of your book how you describe all these things that could possibly be an emergency. You're in an emergency, and I kind of paused at that part, like just right at the beginning of your book when you're like, this might be an emergency situation, and I related to it. And then a lot of people probably know this that have read your book, that I did not know that you lost your house in the fires here in California. So I was like, oh my God, wow, to survive that, you know, that is a grieving process right there, to lose everything, you know. So kudos to you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what was your question?
All right. So I would love to hear your story of a time in your business or personal life where you hit a tough situation and how you got back on track.
So I would say there's two times in my life. And the first time was at the age of 14. And it was the first time actually that I really felt that I didn't want to be here anymore, because I was a figure skater and that was my life. Being on the ice was my life. And it's where I got a lot of love and I got a lot of tools. And then at 14, that came to a stop and my parents got divorced. So not only am I grieving the one thing that I love being on the ice, I'm also now grieving a divorce. And that brought me to my knees at 14. And I really had no tools and no help from anybody around me. There was no support of, wow, that must be really tough. You know, it was like, suck it up, stiff upper lip, you know, let's go, move on. So that brings me to, in my 40s in 2008, I was in the real estate business. And, you know, my previous career was in the entertainment world. And so now I'm working in the business world. And 2008, when the market took a dive, the first thing to go was the market that I was working in, which was the second home luxury market in Park City, Utah. And I had 3 children. I had no money, no place to live, and didn't know what I was going to do because I thought I had really, you know, I was a spa director and then I got in the real estate, and now I was just losing everything. And I was really brought to my knees, and it reminded me of the time when I was 14. All of a sudden, here it comes again, those feelings of, you know, what do I do? Abandonment, you know, just the fear of, you know, and I just remember, you know, the temple that we belonged to in Park City, there was a couple of months where they were giving us groceries. I mean, we had no money. And I was living in a small town, and most people that know this, that live in a small town, real estate is the one thing that you do, right? And so being that kind of came to a halt, I had to like reinvent and figure it out. And so I went to my husband. I was divorced. I went to my husband and I asked him if he would take the kids. We'd switch roles. I'd be the parent that had them in the summer and whatever for now, while I went and I had to go live with my mother. You know, so here I am in my 40s, no money. Now the kids are going to go live with their dad. I had never been without my kids. You know, I was a full-time mom and no money. And here I am living in Ocala, Florida, at a 55 and over community in my 40s, on my knees, like life's over, right? That was my thinking. This is it. You know, I don't know what else to do. And yeah, it took me a while to recover from that. I remember, you know, here I am in this 55 and over community. And my mom would come in my room every day and she's like, "Are you going to get up today?" Oh, because I was just like, "No, I don't want to get up. Get up for what?" Right. So, you know, really smart and wise. She came in one day. She's like, "Can you walk the dog for me?" Mm-hmm. And I started walking the dog. Next thing you know, I start going to the meeting place with all the people in her community, and they're taking an interest in me. "Oh, you're visiting your mom." And then now I know all their names. I know all the dogs' names. And when you know, these people saved my life, and they didn't know they were saving my life because now I had a purpose. I was getting up, walking the dog, and then I'd come back and I'd have this like, "Oh yeah, I'm okay." And I'd get on and start looking for jobs, you know.
Beautiful. Something about community that makes all the difference, and small right actions.
And when you get out of your thinking, right, other people there, like a lot of these people, they're older because it was an older community, and they have health issues, and their kids don't come visit. And I got to hear about all that. You know, they were like, "Oh, your mom's so lucky that you're coming to stay with her." And I'm thinking, "Oh God, if you only knew, I might be staying here a long time," you know. And, you know, and then it just made me realize it's not all about me. You know, it's not about me. And, you know, and I realized I was so deep in my self-pity, like, poor me. Oh my God, I lost my job and my kids. And, you know, and these people are like, their kids never come to visit them and they have health issues. And I started thinking about them. And when I would see them, I was like, "How are you doing? Did your kids call you?" Right. And they didn't know this. They were saving my life. Mm-hmm. You know, just by me getting out of my own way, you know, it opened me up to like, okay, I'm okay. You know, I'm still breathing air. I'm okay.
And look at all the successes and wonderful things that have happened between then and now.
Yeah.
And so now, what would you tell yourself back then if you could go through time and give yourself a message?
To turn it over, to just wait, to just pause. Nothing. And by the way, with any big decision, it's been a hard lesson for me to learn. Oh. Even if I think I know the right answer, even if I think I know, to sleep on it and just pause and just wait. and also to write about it, because I'm so impulsive. It's one of my defects. I'm just really impulsive. Like, okay, let's do it. Which is it's good and bad. It served me really well, because when people say, let's do it, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's make it happen. Okay, let's make it happen. When's a good time? Now. Okay, I'm in. And I'm really like, if people would always joke about me, and it's true, and it's good and bad. They would always say, if you want to get something done, give it to Deborah. Because I was known as just getting it done. But also there's good and bad to that. So the bad part is that it can be impulsive, and really just to step back, slow down. Okay, this doesn't have to be decided right now. Let's just sleep on it. And if I feel the same way tomorrow, then okay, then it's probably the right decision. But I'll tell you what, just taking that moment, like, does it have to be decided right now? Even though I think I know the answer,
right? Just
having that thought now has changed everything, because now I just sit, and a lot of times I'll just sit in silence about it. Like, okay.
That does make such a difference, because I think when we're in that place of survival mode, we're not in the best place mentally to make a decision right away. It's not the same as when everything's good and we can make a decision because everything else is right with the world.
Exactly. Exactly. Anytime you're in survival, fear, in those low spiraling, when you're jealous, envy, angry, any of the downward spiral feeling is the worst time to make any decision about anything. And I used to make decisions out of that emotion, and it's the worst time to do it. It's better to just wait. And so, yeah, I made a lot of crazy decisions. I learned everything I've learned in my life, by the way, I have learned the hard way. Up until about now, up until about 2 years ago, like everything it had to be like, a struggle, and, learning things the hard way, and having people go, you didn't have to do that, but everything I've learned through experience, and I didn't have anybody to sit me down and say, hey, let me just teach you about this. And I've had to seek growth and learning on my own. So, which is a beautiful thing too, that it's even available.
It is definitely. Now I'm wondering, what was it like being a Playboy Centerfold and Covergirl? What was that like for you in that time in your life?
So it still feels like a dream. For me, it was not something that I grew up going, I'm going to be in Playboy. I didn't even really know what Playboy was when my agent called me to have me go in for an audition. I said, well, there's no nudity, right? Because that's all I associated with Playboy was nudity, obviously. And so she's like, no, it's for the cover of a new publication they're doing called The Lingerie Book. And I went, okay, I'll go for that. And of course I get there and they're like handing me a robe and telling me to go change, and they're going to do a Polaroid. I'm like, I'm not here for that. I'm here to be on the cover of The Lingerie Book. And they said, well, everything we do has some nudity. We need to see your body. But then remember, this was in 1989. Back then, they were actually looking for tattoos, scars, piercings. They didn't use that back then. Now that's everybody has that now. But back then, a lot of the jobs I went on for swimsuits or whatever, they were always looking for that to make sure, because it was a different time. Right. And so when I came out, I left my undergarments on and I went to go do the Polaroid. And this isn't the famous Playboy studio on Sunset. And the photographer's like, we need to see your whole body. And I said, oh, no, I'm not here for that. I'm here for the new publication, The Lingerie Book. Right. And he said, well, everything we do has some nudity. And I was like, yeah, I'm not here for that. So I leave. I'm already now difficult. And so I get a call that afternoon and they're like, we want to shoot you for the Centerfold. And I'm like, what? So I call my agent and she's like, yeah, it's true. They want to shoot you for a Centerfold. And I was like, me? Because I was the funny girl, I was a funny girl and I did commercial modeling and lots of commercials. And I didn't think of myself as a sexy Playboy Centerfold. So shooting the whole thing was very surreal. It was like, I just remember like one of the days I was in the studio And I had Richard Fegley, was my photographer who I loved.
Mm.
And I think we actually had the same birthday too, which was really wild. And we're in the studio, and I remember I just kind of took it all in. I looked around, I'm, all propped up with makeup and hair, and they're shooting a scene, and you got the lighting guy and the makeup and this and that. And I just kind of went blank, and he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, this is so surreal. Like, I'm shooting to be in Playboy magazine. How did I get here?
Yes.
And he's like, "I know." He goes, "You're not the first person to have this, reaction, because it just felt so surreal." And I'm from LA. So when they asked me if I needed to stay at the mansion, I said, "No, I live here." I had 2 roommates in Hollywood, and we were all aspiring actors living together. And I said, "No, but I kind of wish I would have, I wish I would have taken that opportunity, because a mansion is so fantastic." And so, everything you hear, I mean, I fell in love with Hef the minute I met him. I just fell in love with him. I just thought he was such an amazing person. He was so nice and loving to all of us. And he had a side to him that the public didn't really see. And that was, he was actually really quiet and just a sweetheart. And so I loved all the opportunities I had to go to the mansion. And by doing Playboy, it really opened up the doors for me. I mean, people wanted to meet me all of a sudden and see me. I was getting a lot of auditions before, but now it was like I was being brought in for everything.
Uh-huh. And then, so that did help you a lot with that. And at one point you got to be a guest on Oprah's show. I guess it was for Valentine's Day.
Yeah. So, back when I did Playboy, I don't know if it was still the same way, but the magazine came out a month before. So if you were March, the magazine came out in February, and she called Playboy. She said, "Who's the centerfold? Because I'm doing a Valentine's Day special." And they said, "It's Deborah Driggs." And she looked, at my photos, and she said, "I want her on the show." So it was me and a couple of soap stars. Unfortunately, I don't remember who the soap stars were. And there was a cowboy, a famous rodeo cowboy. And we were discussing Valentine's Day and what we do on Valentine's Day. And it's a sexy holiday and that type. It was I think I shot that in 1990. Yeah, right in January that we shot that show. So January of 90 or February of 90, maybe it was 2 weeks before Valentine's Day or something, you tape it and then it comes out for... So yeah, and Oprah Winfrey was huge.
Right.
I remember they flew me to Chicago, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God," she came in to meet me, and I was just like, "Oh my God, Oprah," and I was a kid, I was a baby, I'm 25.
Right.
Switch
this.
I wish I had that opportunity now, because I would have something to say, but I didn't know who I was back then. Really, yeah. I was just a kid.
I'm wondering, where were your parents in all of this, and what were their thoughts on their daughter doing all this?
So I had a relationship with my mother, and I called her, and she was a fan of the magazine. And in 1989, Playboy was the #1 magazine in the world. So it wasn't just a little. I mean, everybody, millions of people were reading Playboy at this point. So she was a fan of the magazine, and she was totally supportive of it, completely. Right. And most of the people in my life were extremely supportive. Yes. And I think it was just weird because I'm their daughter, and also because I didn't portray myself. Like, what's interesting is that my issue came out, and I'd walk down the street and you wouldn't put it together that but it was my cover in April when that came up. People were like, "Are you on the cover of Playboy?" Like, they recognized me more from that than.
Oh, wow. How fun.
Yeah. Though. And it's what's come full circle is that, Hef normally did not put men on the cover of the magazine. And my issue, Donald Trump, is on the cover. So now I get more fan mail today than I did during the time that I got a lot of fan mail when it came out. But now I'm getting packages, at least 1 to 2 packages a day, for people to have me sign the magazine. And it's because of Trump. It's a collector's item now.
How interesting is that? Wow.
Yeah. Who knew?
I didn't notice that one issue.
Yeah.
Right.
So who knew, Thank you, Mr. President.
There you go. That's so funny. And now, how did you go from being the Playboy Centerfold to then getting into acting?
I had already been in acting. So I had already done a handful of commercials and promotions and spokesperson type stuff. And, I had already started a career. And so what it did was, when Playboy found out that I already had agents and I was already working, they loved it because they were like, oh, she acts. She can actually act. And they Playboy Channel started, they had their own network back then. And so they were going to do a show like MTV VH1, which is so funny when you think about this now, because now anything gets shown.
Right.
But back then they wouldn't show. MTV and VH1 had rules about what videos and what would be shown and not shown. So any videos that they wouldn't show on those networks, we showed on Playboy's Hot Rocks. And I was the first VJ for the show because they were like, well, she knows what she can do this job. So they had me be the first VJ for Playboy. And it's so funny when I watch, because I just had all this switched to a hard drive. I had it on VHS for the longest time. And I was watching like the first show all the way to towards the end of my time on the show. And the first show, like we didn't even know what we were doing. It was kind of like, it was just funny. Yeah. And I'm super green and I couldn't put two words together. And it just was funny to watch where it progressed to. It actually got really good. And then I had to go and I got to go do a movie. The first film I worked on was a movie with Michael Nuri called Total Exposure, and Susan Hubley was the star. And so I took all this time. And so Jenny McCarthy actually replaced me on Hot Rocks. Mm-hmm. And that's what led her to get on the MTV show that made her famous. So it's just interesting how it all.
Yes. And then did you already have your children at this point, or?
No, I met my husband in acting class. He had done a film called American Anthem. He was in the Olympics in 1984 and won 4 medals, and just a huge, well-known, superb athlete. And he did a movie and it didn't do so well. So we ended up in the same acting class. And at the end of the first year, it was a 2-year Meisner program. And at the end of first year, we got paired up to do a scene, the girl on the Via Flaminia. And we became really good friends. And we really started dating towards the end of the second year is when we really started dating and thought that we would take it, we became serious. And we got married in 1992 and I had 3 kids back to back. And probably around 1999, I stopped auditioning, maybe one here or there. I kind of picked and choose what I'd go out on just because a lot of things were taking me away. Like I tried to do a soap when my son was born, and it's really hard to do both, to be a mom and to do that. So I chose to be a full-time mom, and I did side jobs here and there, lots of commercial work, and infomercials were getting huge in the 90s. And so I was doing little parts on infomercials and that type of stuff.
Wow. And so you got to be with your children, which is something that not a lot of people get to do, really. It's such a gift.
Yeah. No, it's a total gift that I got to be with my kids. Yeah.
Yes. And then somehow, how did you get into your new career with the insurance and all that you're doing now?
So in 2009, when I was living with my mom, I had done a couple jobs previous, and I had reconnected with the company that actually did my husband and I's insurance when we were married. And I called and I said, hey, if I refer you business, can I make money? Because I referred them business when they did our insurance. And, so I thought, I know a lot of people in LA, and instead of saying, yeah, refer us business, he was like, go get your license, Deborah. You know everybody, and you'd be great at this because you're a people person. So my biggest hurdle when I first started really was getting people to take me seriously in business and not look at me like because especially the people that I was calling, they knew my background. They knew that I was an actress. They knew that I was, in Playboy. And so to have them look at me differently was the biggest hurdle. So I got my license. I studied for 2 weeks, passed the test, got my life insurance and my life settlement license. And the first person I called was a friend of mine who used to be the head of Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And I called him up and I said, hey, if I really need you to be my client, I'd really like to do your insurance. And I know that if I get you as a client, that you will refer me business. And he's like, I have a friend, Deb, and I already have life insurance. And, and he kept kind of, trying to be nice and push me aside. And I said, well, let me just do an audit, and I'm totally new at what I'm doing. And he can see right through it. And he's like, Deborah, I already have it. Okay. And I was like, I'm going to call you next week because things change. I'm going to stay in touch. He's like, Deborah. I said, no, what more can I say, and he goes, I'll refer you business, but I'm good. So I called him a week later and I said, look, things can change. And he was just like, okay, what is it that you want to do? And I said, I just want to do an audit. And if I can save you money on your premiums, if it's a substantial amount, then will you switch and be my client? Because if I get you, I know that I can really open my business. He goes, do the audit.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to save him 18 to 22%, something like that on his premiums. He switched. He started referring me business. And when he's telling everybody, just do your insurance with her because she's not going to leave you alone.
Mm.
So he's selling for me. And that's when I coined the phrase, no means maybe. And I wrote it in big letters on my yellow pad. And I looked at it every day because I was like, no is not no, and don't take it personally. No, and even if, and sometimes it is, but I have just learned and especially in the last 10 years, that even if somebody doesn't do business with me, they refer me business.
Right.
Maybe they don't want to do it, but they do refer me. And that is like, wow, it's such a compliment, They'll say, oh, I know somebody. And, it's funny. I went through my entire contact list when I first started, and I called everybody. Even people that I knew were not going to do insurance with me, I called because I thought, I just want it to be in their head that this is what I'm doing in case they run across somebody that wants to do insurance with me. And it helped that I had a lot of connections in the entertainment world because they really do need insurance to go on tour, and they actually need insurance. So I made relationships with a lot of business managers and a lot of agents, and saying, look, if your client needs life insurance, and some of those people are really hard to insure, and our company just happens to be known, like Ozzy Osbourne is one of our clients. So
right.
And that's I need another hour to tell that story, but yeah. So that helped a lot that I had those connections.
That's really an important tip for those listening in. If you're in a position where you are doing sales calls or working with somebody and you need to get a yes, just keep going. Don't take it personally. I can't even tell you how many times I ended up saying yes to something as a store owner, where somebody would come into my store 4 or 5 times every single, few months. Next thing you know, the next year I was their client. And it's like, I just didn't have time. I didn't know what I didn't know. So once you did your presentation, then he was like, oh, wow, this audit. Okay, I'm going to save all this money. Let's go. And so a lot of times they're saying no to something and they don't even know what it is yet. So I think really once you get the information in front of them, that's really, if you haven't gotten to that point, that is definitely a maybe, because they don't even know what they're saying no to.
Yeah. And we have a whole, because we deal with such high end clientele, and really our company doesn't do anything under 5 million. So we have our own private doctor, and we have these services that most companies don't have or don't use. And so that's another great selling point. We're always trying to look at how we can add value, especially to people that are in the public that don't they want to be very careful of who comes to their house and things
Right.
like that. So we're just constantly looking at how we can add value and make it much easier, especially for the clientele that we deal with.
Now, that's one thing. When you started out in business and you were new at this, and people had this idea about who you were as an actress and in Playboy, that it's something about your confidence that showed up even before you had all the words, even before you knew exactly what you were going to say. You were confident enough, and you knocked on the door, you made the calls. And that's the thing that's getting rid of the fear. That's the most important thing to success, I believe. And
I definitely had the fear. I was the fake it till you make it girl, because I have to tell you, a couple of the jobs that I did put me in very precarious positions where it was like, okay, I remember, okay, so I met with Ron Perlman. He owns Revlon. And this was when I was working in the print procurement business. And I met with Ron, and I got in with him because of a connection. Mm-hmm. And he said, you got to meet with Deborah. And he goes, so when I called to get in, his assistant goes, you have 10 minutes. And he didn't even let me come to his office. He put me in a private room with his assistant in the room. And he goes, okay, you have 10 minutes. What do you got?
Oh my.
And this is in New York. And talk about intimidation. So I was like, elevator pitch really quick. I was like, listen, all I really want is to get to your head of procurement. And I want you to give me a small opportunity. And if I do really well with that small opportunity, I'd like to get a lot of your business, because I'm in print and packaging, and Revlon was huge. And so he looked at his assistant. He goes, set her up with Mr. Cohen and head of procurement. Boom, walked out of the room. And I was like, oh my God, did that just happen? And so sure enough, now I've got to go meet with the head of procurement, and I got to know my stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, But those are the kind of things that would happen. And I would think, okay, Deb, you're smart. You're not just this, you're actually smart. And I'm a girl that barely graduated high school. And so I realized that what I had was networking skills and people skills. And you're right. People brought me in, and they actually liked me because I followed up. I actually called them on the phone, and they weren't used to that, and I would send thank you notes. And, I was so grateful when anybody gave me an opportunity. I don't think Ron Perlman would ever expect me to send a thank you note. You know what I mean? And so that was the kind of stuff that I would do. Because people don't do that anymore. They don't write handwritten thank you notes. And, now I do it on email. I don't think people really check their mail anymore because everything's online, but I still, try to remember to send a thank you, especially in the moment when I'm feeling grateful, is when it comes out more authentic. And so, anybody that is in the fear, that's the best, because when you're scared, then you really have to do it. And there's nothing scarier than living in New York and trying to do business. And I really learned a lot that year of my life. I was there from December 2009 until September 2010. And then I got transferred to Irvine to be back with my kids. But this was right before insurance. But that time that I spent in New York, most valuable time of my life, because I was used to LA. People are very casual in LA. It's like two different planets, really. And anybody who's listening that has done business in New York or lived in New York compared to LA will tell you it is completely different. People are quick and fast, and they're not late. They're always on time or early. And it's I always say now, my advice to young people when they graduate is to go live in New York for a year and really scare the shit out of yourself, because really that's what it'll do. It'll wake you up. And I did it in my 40s. So, and it was really hard. And I just remember going into meetings and I would fumble all over myself. Like, I'm trying to talk about print procurement. I had to memorize stuff and try to know my stuff. And I knew nothing about print. But that's not the point. I didn't need to know anything about print. I just needed to show up, do what I said I was going to do, and provide the best service,
That is the thing. I mean, my experience with the studios, I had buildings that I rented to a lot of the studios in Burbank, Warner Brothers and different ones. And I was this young 23-year-old when I did my first lease. And I said, well, I need to do a credit check. And there was like 30 guys that had come out to look from the studio, and they all started laughing, and they thought it was so cute because you do not need a credit check from us. And I was like, that's the training I got. I need a credit check. They're like, honey, we'll give you a credit check.
Yeah.
But I got the lease, and it was just one of those things where you learn, and other people are like, oh, I'd be afraid. I'm like, I had no choice. And you kind of have to do that. And it's almost not having a choice and having to show up. You get to see who you really are when you have to show up. And so, that's great.
By the way, I tell everybody that is more than half of the battle. Mm-hmm. Just show up. Just show up. If you say you're going to be somewhere, just show up, no matter what.
Yes.
And the miracle happens when you show up. It doesn't happen when you cancel or your mind freaks you out and says, you can't do it, And and believe me, I know that because I've done it. I'm only talking from experience. I've made all these mistakes. And the times that things have really worked out for me is when I just show up. Yeah. And I may not know everything, and I may not feel 100% that day, and I may not feel that I have anything to offer, but if I just show up, it just comes, and I just focus on that I'm there for the other person and not for myself.
Right. That does make a big difference. And I'd love to know, what was it like traveling and rubbing elbows with all the rich and famous, Richard Branson, Tony Robbins, Van Jones, Prime Minister, and Martin Luther King Jr. III, and his wife. What was that like?
So it wasn't really rubbing elbows, that it wasn't like a party or anything. But what I did is I'm always looking for ways to grow, to learn. And so Virgin Unite is just a great opportunity to learn and grow. And so they had a leadership program that I attended on Necker Island. And it was the Prime Minister of Bhutan, Martin Luther King and his wife, Andrea, Van Jones, that's how I met Van and started getting involved with him, with his redemption project, and Richard Branson, of course, the great Richard Branson. And so, that will scare you unless you're used to that. I'm not. And so I put myself in that situation to really grow as a human. And, I was around a different type of community in the entertainment world, not the business world. And so it's completely different. Like, we had the ex-president of Colombia was on this trip, and just hearing his story, things like that I would not be exposed to. Right. And so I put myself there because I wanted to be exposed and be in proximity to people who had done great things and that are here for social change and are leaders. And I want to know what they do, And so I really went and just listened, I'm just a girl trying to make a buck, and here I am now listening to the Prime Minister of Bhutan talk about how great his country is and how amazing, his leadership, and what a gift. It was amazing. And I did 2 trips. I went to Africa with Richard and Virgin Unite, and just amazing because the people that go on those trips are entrepreneurial minded business owners, philanthropists, people that are really, they want to make a change. They want to donate. They want to give, and it was just learning from me. And then, of course, Tony Robbins he's one of the best speakers in the world. I've heard him say the same thing over and over for the last 3 years. And you would think that I would be like, okay, I've heard this. I'm tired of it. But I always am like shocked at the fact that I always continually learn something new, and I've heard him speak many, many times. The first time I heard Tony speak, he met my ex-husband, and he invited us to be guests in 1992.
Wow.
And we did our first date with Destiny in San Diego. And we were that group where the train went by. Because Tony talks about this all the time. When the train went by, we had to jump up and down because we'd be in the middle of something really, we'd be in the middle, he'd be in the middle of this great intervention, and the train would go by. And at first everybody was like aggravated by it. And so every time and so every time he tells that story, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so old. I was there.
Oh, that is incredible. And that is obviously we met through the Tony's group, and that is something that is so important. Even if you're not able to attend right now, there's virtual events, and there's so many opportunities and ways even to bring your young adults. I know when I did the platinum and traveled with Tony, I traveled for about 7 years straight with the group. And for me, I brought my youngest two for 2.5 years, and they traveled with me, and it was the best education. It changed their whole mindset and trajectory in life. It was such a gift. And so whenever you can do that and you have the opportunity in life, whether it's reading a book, listening to something online, listening to even a show, something like that, when you can bring your family in, it can change their whole entire mindset. And
I agree.
It helps decisions. It was really the best.
I agree. Yeah, it was beautiful because I was really fortunate that my kids were able to experience a lot of it with me. And there was a lot of healing that went on, with my kids and things that had happened. And, and that's what's so beautiful about it, is the healing that takes place, when you really learn, it's always interesting to me because, we go through life and we think we have these tools. And we think, out of innocence that we're doing the right thing, but, life catches up with you, and then you realize, oh, I don't really have the tool for that. And that's the first step, is really like being open to getting a new perspective, a new tool. And I'm still, believe me, I just went through something recently that I was like, wow, here we go again. Like I need a new perspective. I need a new tool. And, so I'm constantly, I don't think I will, whatever, knock on wood, the end of my life will be, but I don't think I'll ever be like, oh, I got it. I got it. It was one day, it just all came to me just like that. And it was so clear. It was like poof, right there. And, it's just not going to happen. It doesn't work that way. I think really true growth is an everyday, one day at a time. And now I have this new thing where I go to bed at night and I'm like, okay, did I do everything I said I was going to do today? Mm-hmm. Was I really honest about that? Because, I have, if you saw right now, I have this whiteboard. It's funny because it's been in a lot of pictures on my social media, and people are like, you're very organized, because my whiteboard is in the background. And they're like, I like your schedule, but I have it all written, and it's like, sometimes we think we have good intentions, like we're going to get something done and we're going to do this and we're going to finish that and blah, blah, blah. So at the end of the day, now I check in with myself, and it's not to beat myself up. It's to say, okay, where in my day could I have done something better? And this happened yesterday. But yesterday I was a little short with my kids.
Oh, yes.
Because I wasn't in a good place. And, I was a little charged about something. And I had to sit back. And I even said to them, you know what, I'm going to go listen to my book and just have my space. And then I woke up this morning because when I went to sleep, I was like, what could I have done better in that situation? What would the best version of me done better in that situation?
I totally agree. And there's something that happens when we give ourselves self-love.
Yeah.
Love and the understanding that we would give to our children. And you're modeling that for your own children as well.
Yeah.
Would you ever want your daughter or son or somebody to beat themselves up over something that maybe it was a slow day. Maybe it was a hard day. Maybe you weren't feeling as well. Maybe you needed to give yourself a minute to just be.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's okay. In our society, it's not all about being a human doing.
Yeah.
We're human beings. The first thing in my book is to go into being. Who am I
Yes.
being in all that I'm doing? How am I showing up? No matter what I'm called to do, who am I being? And
Yes.
it's so important, and something that it's almost like our society has trained it out of us in all the
Well, it's so true. And that's why I kind of felt like I found the pandemic to be, I got very grateful about it because I was like, wow, I don't like wearing a mask. Okay. But that's trivial. What really happened is everybody had to slow down
Mhm.
and reevaluate. And it just became, because I think things are moving so fast in our world today. I'm noticing it at my age, and I've been on the planet 57 years, and I'm noticing that things move a lot faster today than they did when I was in my 20s. I mean, time goes by faster for me, and people say that as that happens when you get older, but my kids notice it too.
Mhm.
And I didn't notice that in my 20s. I didn't notice that time went by so fast. In my business, I'm so used to being out and traveling and going and doing and moving, and everything's fast and quick. And it's not what's happening today.
No, no. I know for my daughter and myself, my daughter moved home after we lost my youngest son, and he had a heart condition, and we lost him December 21st, 2019, which was our equinox. And then with that, she moved home, and we went to Tony's birthday party, February 29th, and then the world shut down and we had COVID happen. And she said, Mom, if ever there was a time that our family needed this universal pause, it was now. We needed that. We needed that more than we even wanted to admit. Sometimes our busyness keeps us from healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it really made a difference for us. And we've
And
had,
and
yes.
how beautiful is that she is saying
Yes.
that to you? It's so beautiful. Yeah, I kind of, I didn't like it at first, but now I'm really liking the 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 comfort of working from home. And
Mhm.
kind of it's kept me a little bit more in a balance, a little bit more in check, a little bit more. I'm getting things done. I'm not running and traveling. I'm just home. These last couple months, I have felt more creative than I have ever felt in my life. Like I was trying to think about the last time that I actually felt really creative. And I was like, God, I think it was when I was a kid, like, that I felt creative. Like the stuff that I'm writing about now. And, I'm just finishing my book and I'm rewriting it. And
Yes.
I wrote it last year during the pandemic, but I was still moving fast. And it's such a difference now. When I'm writing, I'm like, oh
Mm.
my God, I wish I didn't get this, and now I'm like, what's coming out is much different and more creative and more, it's just coming from a different place, and
Right.
whatever that is, but it's there. And yeah, I feel really lucky to have this time.
I love that. And so now you don't have the book ready yet for us.
No, not yet.
Okay. So
I put out there to the universe that it will be out by the end of the summer.
all right. So then we will invite you back on the show to share about the book when it does come out.
Yeah, there's
So,
a lot in the book.
yeah, yeah, that's wonderful.
It's a lot of, it's deep. I talk about my childhood trauma,
Mhm.
and and how I stuffed it down until 2008 is when it really reappeared and showed itself to me. And I was like, oh my God, I'd been running from it for so long, and you can only run for so long until that stuff catches up with you. So
Mhm.
that's really what the book is about.
Nice.
And the book is called I'm a Late Bloomer, because I am. I am a late bloomer.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, we are running low on time now. So I wanted to thank you again for being a guest, and we will share about the book when it is available. And where can people reach you or reach out to you to learn more?
I'm going to be posting a lot of stuff on Instagram. I post past, stuff from when I was acting and modeling and all of that, and recent stuff. And then as we get closer, I'll be putting it on Instagram, and that's where I think I'm going to be posting most of my stuff. So at Deborah Driggs on Instagram, and any podcasts that I'm doing or any interviews will be posted there.
All right. All right. Thank you again for being a guest on the show.
Sheila, so good to see you.
You too.
I loved your book too, and I hope everybody reads it.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank one of our sponsors for today's show, and that is AssuranceDNA.com. Not sure if the child's yours? Pregnant and unsure if the child is his? Assurance DNA is here to help you find the answers to your questions. Assurance DNA is a paternity testing service with access to over 5,000 testing locations across the country. They provide legal paternity testing and home paternity test kits. Can't leave the house? Assurance DNA has a network of mobile collectors that can come to you. Assurance DNA is partnered with DNA Diagnostics Center, a trusted source for DNA testing that has processed over 20 million DNA tests since 1995. At Assurance DNA, you're not just a number, you're family. And when you call, you'll speak to a paternity testing expert who will guide you through the entire process. Everyone's situation is unique. So visit AssuranceDNA.com today to schedule a free consultation or give them a call at 877-362-6450 to speak to a paternity expert. Assurance DNA. Confidence is knowing. So, friends, order Peace of Mind Home Paternity Test Kit today and get 10% off using the code Sheila, SHEILA. Assurance DNA provides a prepaid envelope for you to return your samples to its laboratory partner. So connect today at www.assurance.com.
And today we have special guest John Lee Dumas. John is the founder and host of the award-winning podcast Entrepreneurs on Fire. With over 100 million listeners of his 3,000 plus episodes, John Lee Dumas has turned Entrepreneurs on Fire into a media empire that generates over 1 million listeners every month and 7 figures of net annual revenue 8 years in a row. His first traditionally published book, The Common Path to Uncommon Success, is available for pre-order now with 5 amazing bonuses at uncommonsuccessbook.com. All right, welcome to the show, John.
Sheila, I am fired up to be here. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Yes. And one of the things that I like to start out with is if you have a time in your business or personal life where you hit a tough situation and how you got back on track.
You know, I'll choose a personal moment for me. You know, I was an officer in the U.S. Army for 8 years, and I spent 13 months as a platoon leader in charge of 4 tanks and 16 men. And it was a very, very intense time. It was, you know, war, so to speak. So when I got back, it was pretty intense because I just transitioned to the civilian world. And I absolutely dealt with PTSD. I dealt with depression. I dealt reintegrating back into the quote unquote civilian world. And I struggled for a long time with it. But, you know, by surrounding myself with the right people, other vets that were going through similar things, by, you know, talking to therapists and other professionals, I was able to move forward and enter the next chapter of my life.
Wow, that's incredible. And thank you for your service. So one of the questions that I have is, as an entrepreneur, what is the number one reason you think that entrepreneurs are failing at such a high rate today?
Because, Sheila, they're trying to copy other entrepreneurs that they see that are successful, and they're becoming weak, pale imitations of those entrepreneurs. What everybody needs to realize is that they have a big idea within themselves. They have a zone of fire that they can be living within. You know, you're a special person. You're unique. You're a snowflake. You have something amazing to share with the world. Don't try to copy and imitate and be a pale, weak imitation of somebody else's message. Find your message, do your thing, find your big idea, live in your zone of fire every single day.
Now, why is identifying your big idea not enough sometimes?
Listen, it's just not enough because Your big idea is this big, amazing idea, but other people have had that big idea, and that's competition that's entrenched, that's been doing it for a while. You've got to identify a void within that big idea that's not being filled. You've got to discover a niche that is not being utilized. You've got to understand and uncover a real problem within that big idea that's currently not being solved. That's how and where you're actually going to be able to get your initial momentum, your initial traction to actually win.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. I've been an entrepreneur since I was like in my early 20s, starting my first gift store and going on from there. And one of the things I found is there's so many people, experts, proclaimed experts out there. How do people deal with that? Like, there's so many that aren't really experts. How have people been lied to by these self-proclaimed experts in this online business world now?
Listen, there are some fantastic experts out in this world here. They are sharing amazing, great value with the world. And then there's the so-called experts. And by the way, a red flag for these so-called experts is when they like to share things like the path to success is hidden, or it's secret, or it's complicated. But for $1,997.97, I will give you the key to unlock all your success and your dreams. And you see that everywhere. But the reality is this: I've interviewed 3,000 successful entrepreneurs. I have learned from every single one what it takes to become a success, to find your version of financial freedom and fulfillment. And it's taken me a decade to compile all this knowledge, but I can tell you without a doubt, with 3,000 actual case studies to pull from, the path to success, it's a common one. It is a very common path. There are fundamental principles that entrepreneurs follow to achieve their version of financial freedom and fulfillment. I mean, that's why I didn't write the book, The Complicated Path to I didn't write the secret path or the hidden path. It's the common path to uncommon success. But let's be clear, Sheila, you've worked hard in the past. I have worked really hard in the past. Every entrepreneur that I've interviewed has worked very hard. It is not an easy road to uncommon success. It's a common path where there are 17 core foundational principles that you can work hard, follow step by step, and achieve to get to financial freedom and fulfillment.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And what is your favorite one of those steps in that roadmap?
It would definitely be chapter 7, step 7, which is creating your content production plan. Again, not only have I interviewed 3,000 of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, but I run the world's largest podcasting paid community. It's called Podcaster's Paradise. We have over 6,000 members. We've been running it for 8 years. I've seen it all. And I can tell you without a doubt, the people who win, which are very few, that win at a high level, have a fantastic content production plan. All the other people do something that we call pod fading. They just kind of fade off into the distance. And that's true in podcasting. That's true in YouTube. That's true in social media. That's true in all forms of business.
Right.
If your content production plan is not dialed in and fantastic, you will lose.
And I'd love to hear more about your book launch, maybe some more details about that.
So like I said, this book is the culmination of the 3,000 interviews I've done with the world's most successful entrepreneurs. I boiled down the 17 core foundational principles that we all share as successful entrepreneurs. And I put it in this chronological 17-step roadmap, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. It took me 8 hours of writing 2 hours per day, 480 writing hours to get to the 71,000 words, the 273 pages that comprise the common path to uncommon success. But it's here, it's done, it's available. And if you want to learn more about the book, you can read the first chapter for free. You can see the amazing 5 bonuses. You can see the endorsements from Seth Godin, Gary Vaynerchuk, Neil Patel, Erica Mandy, Dory Clark, and so much more at uncommonsuccessbook.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to reading your book And I hope everyone listening in also does. All right. Thank you again, John, for being a guest on the show. All right.
Adios.
To grab a copy of my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, The Formula to Go from Rock Bottom Back into Action in Any Situation. It is now available on Audible as well as on Amazon and Kindle and at www.sheilamac.com.